In today's video, we're continuing on with our NHL Offseason Plan Series. We're now at the 13th ranked team for the NHL's regular season, the Minnesota Wild. The Wild were a team who made the playoffs, unfortunately lost out early. They do have a little bit more flexibility this offseason, so we're going to take a look at what we expect them to do during the draft, free agency, as well as internal business and any trades they may make. How can this team look forward and get better for next year? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the 13th ranked team in the regular season, the Minnesota Wild, and explaining what we feel they're going to do in the offseason as part of their plan to get ready and better for next year. The Minnesota Wild got back into the playoffs this year after missing the year before, but unfortunately were ousted in the first round. And obviously have some work to do to continue building towards becoming what they hope to become, a Stanley Cup contender, like all teams strive for. But 13th in the NHL's regular season is certainly nothing to be ashamed of. It was a good bounce back year, and they hope to continue to build on that. So today we're going to first recap some of the 24-25 team and individual stats. We'll take a look at where things sit with their cap space, their internal business, so their RFAs, UFAs, big contract extensions, which they have some big ones looming over the offseason. Plus, we'll then explore what we think they might do between the draft, free agency, and the trade market. So let's first recap the 24-25 campaign here for the Minnesota Wild. They had a 97-point campaign, made the playoffs in the Western Conference as a wildcard team. Their record was 45-30-7. That's a 10-point improvement over last year, where they unfortunately missed the playoffs here by a little bit. So they get back into the mix. They certainly had some improvements. Obviously, like I said, I have a ways to go to become a contender, and we'll discuss part of their plan here to hopefully work on that this offseason. Looking at their team stats, though, they scored 225 goals this year, which was not a great result. It's 25th best in the NHL, so they certainly would like to become more offensive. That is down 26 goals from the year before, where they scored 251. When we look at some of their individual stats, though, I think a big part of that could be injuries. They certainly had some key players like Kaprizov miss a fairly significant time. So the answers to improving their goal scoring might just be to stay healthy. Obviously, there's always room to get better, and they can maybe add some scoring through their offseason changes, but they have a lot of the internal answers, I think, already within the group. Goals against, they allowed 236, which was 16th, so league average, which is pretty decent, and they had a good improvement in that area. The year before, they allowed 263 goals against, so that was a 27-goal improvement. So overall, they scored 26 less, but they kept 27 more pucks out of their net. So essentially, it's a small net gain of, basically +1 when you want to compare their goals against and goals for over the last year versus the year before. The power play was okay. It was respectable, 20th in the league, 20.9%. The PK, though, was not good at all, 72.4 for 30th best. So obviously, penalty killing, definitely the area that they want to get better at. They probably want to change the mix a little bit with a few of their players that have roles in that special team. Goaltending-wise, looking at some individual stats, Philip Gustafsson had a pretty solid year, a record of 31-19-6. He had a 2.56 goals against average and a .914 save percentage. He was one of the goaltenders to represent Sweden at the Four Nation tournament. And like I said, overall, had a very good season. Marc-Andre Fleury, in his final NHL campaign, played the role of the backup to Gustafsson this year. Had a record of 14-9-1, a 293 goals against, and an .899 save percentage. Respectable, but not the greatest numbers. But we know Fleury, like I said, it was his last campaign. He ended up going to represent Canada at the World Championships afterwards to kind of finish things out, which is actually something he did for the first time. So Fleury get to finish out his final NHL days in a Wild jersey, which I know he was happy to do. And regardless of his stats, he is not coming back next year. Looking at their team scoring leaders, Matt Boldy led the way with 73 points. Marco Rossi, who we'll discuss further in this video as well, second in team scoring with 60 points. Kaprizov was third with 56 points, but he only played in 41 games. He ended up missing basically half the year. So Kaprizov was off to a phenomenal start, and then the injury caused him to miss a lot of time. Zuccarello ended up fourth in scoring with 54 points. Throughout the year at the deadline, they did make some additions trying to get in and secure their playoff spot. They added some guys like Nyquist and Brazeau. Obviously, earlier in the season, they were able to pick up another good young defenseman in David Jiricek, who was unhappy with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they got him, and then they just signed Danila Yurov to come over from Russia, who was a fairly high pick a couple seasons back. So obviously bringing in Jiricek, getting Yurov signed, will add some more interesting youth here to this mix. Looking at their cap space right now, they have $15.7 million available space, and they have 20 roster spots already spoken for next year. A few of those spots are players who could go down to the minors, so there is room to kind of change and manipulate that if need be. Looking at their internal business, so they're restricted and unrestricted free agents, so expiring contracts. On the RFA side, they have Marco Rossi and Declan Chisholm. A lot of word right now that Marco Rossi and the Wild are having, I guess we'd almost call it like a stalemate. Very different opinions of what his contract's going to look like, and his future is in jeopardy. We'll discuss that in the next segment. On the UFA side, we've got Justin Brazeau and Gus Nyquist, who were acquired at the NHL trade deadline. Of course, Marc-Andre Fleury, who we know is heading into retirement, and defenseman John Merrill. I don't expect Merrill to be back. Pretty decent chance Nyquist and Brazeau hit free agency as well. Small chance Nyquist resigns for cheap, but I'm not even sure that's something they're looking to do. They're probably going to try to explore other options first. Some of the biggest business we might see from the Wild will be in the contract extension business. This offseason, they do have some players that are quite important to the team that are in that category, including Kaprizov. Of course, nobody's more important than him. They get Gustafsson, Zuccarello, and some younger guys like Jiricek, or even a veteran like Bogosian could get one, but Gustafsson and Kaprizov by far the big ones there. So the top questions facing this franchise in the offseason. To me, the biggest business that this team very well might be internally, and probably the biggest thing they're looking to do is extend Kirill the Thrill, or Dollar Bill, whatever you want to call him. He's got many nicknames. The other way, he's one heck of a hockey player and very important to this team. And Kirill Kaprizov might become the highest paid winger in the NHL, or at the very least, he might become one of the highest paid players total in the NHL. From what we've heard, the Wild are prepared to offer the moon to this guy, to hopefully get an 8-year commitment from him to stay and be a part of this team on a long-term basis. I'm not sure. Kaprizov may want to. Well, he's not eligible to sign until July 1st anyway, so you're going to see, players like Marner likely already have a contract in place. Mitch Marner's contract could have a big impact on what Kaprizov gets on the open market. If he ends up getting upwards of $14 million, like we've heard might happen, that's going to have a big effect on him. They're obviously both two of the stronger offensive wingers who can both score and produce a lot of playmaking skills. And, looking at guys like Mikko Rantanen as well, who just, signed for $12 million. So, some of these guys are going to have an impact. But Kaprizov's extension, which you would expect they're probably already having conversations about, likely the biggest piece of business this team does all year. If they can get him to commit on a new 8-year commitment, that would go a long way to securing the team's star player. So, like I said, that's ultra important. Obviously, Philip Gustafsson would be next as far as contract extension goes. Gustafsson obviously plays a pivotal role here, and we'll see how things work out on that front. Now, the other big questions facing the team, though, is the Marco Rossi situation. We've heard, like I said, he's a pending RFA. But it seems like his future is elsewhere. Even though he was the second highest scorer on this team, now if Kaprizov's healthy, he probably is the third highest, but still a top 3 scorer on this team. And it seems like the Wild are ready and willing to part ways with him. And it sounds like the asking price might not be as high as you'd think, which is unfortunate. The belief is that the contract that Rossi wants versus the contract that the Wild are willing to go to are nowhere near the same. Yeah, it sounds like, I believe there was like a 6x6 offer or something for Rossi, which was not accepted. So it sounds like a trade is pretty much inevitable by those that are well connected and have the intel on the inside. We've heard a lot of interest from Vancouver on Rossi. I'm sure there's others as well. There was some to Montreal. I don't know that Montreal wants another. Like, I'm sure they'd like the player. A lot of teams are going to like the player, but to me, they already have a lot of small forwards. I don't know that Montreal. I mean, yeah, you can make an argument that he'd be a good fit there. He'd probably get a chance to play with Demidov. Maybe that works out. But, do they want another smaller size forward? I don't know. Whereas a team like Vancouver has a better mix of guys there. So, but there's lots of teams that are going to show interest in this guy. But the belief is Rossi will likely be traded by the draft. So prepare for that, and hopefully the return is half decent. The other big question facing this team is goaltending. Of course, with Fleury's retirement, the next question is Jesper Wallstedt ready for full-time NHL duty as a backup to Philip Gustafsson? Will they extend Philip Gustafsson? I would think they would. He's been a good pickup from them. He had an inconsistent younger part to his career with the Senators. They got him in a trade for Cam Talbot, and it's worked out quite nicely. He's really kind of settled in and matured, and he had a few times where, like, I think a little bit of inconsistent play since he's been there, but generally speaking, he's been good. So I fully suspect an extension for Gustafsson to be ironed out this summer as well. And then the next question is Wallstedt. Obviously with former first-round pick, he's been spending his time in the minors. They signed him to an extension like they expected him to be there. It's on a 2-year deal, $2.2 million. So his numbers in the American Hockey League last year were not great. 359 goals against and an 879 save percentage. So, in a few games he played in the NHL, not great results either. So I don't know if the team has any cold feet in that regard, but right now things are trending towards him becoming the backup next year, and I don't know if there's any chance they have a change in plans and figure out another goalie to come in. I'm not sure if he's traded. I mean, I'd be careful with that, but yeah, so Wallstedt is definitely a wild card here, if you will, I think, for this team going into next year as well. In the draft, they do have 4 picks in total. They don't have a first-round pick or a third or a 7th. So, I'm not sure we're going to see much in the way of trades to generate more picks. I mean, it's always possible. Maybe they get a first-rounder back for Rossi. They don't necessarily sound like they're trading Rossi for a player per se. I mean, if they can find the right deal and they get a young forward back that they really like, maybe they do that. But the belief is that they're willing, if they need to take a futures-based package for Rossi, whether it be a pick and a prospect or something, and then, flip that to another team for the player that they want. So we're not quite clear who that player is, or if they kind of have some targets. There hasn't been much speculation around that. But at the draft, I do think, we could see the Wild get involved with some extra compensation for Rossi, but will they be able to hang on to that, or do they need to flip it for another piece? And that's kind of a big question around the Wild right now. I don't know that they're going to be doing a lot of drafting this year, but they're low on draft capital. That much is for certainty. So when it comes to trades, obviously, like, Rossi's the main one that we know of that they're thinking about moving. When it comes to free agency, they do have the space. If they wanted to add another player, I would think that they would want to add it forward, especially somebody who can score some goals. On the back end, I think, between Zeev Buium coming out of college and signing, they picked up Juracek last year. You got a young but very reliable and very important Brock Faber. You got some veterans there like Spurgeon and Brodin and Middleton. Like, I think they're pretty good on defense. So if they're going to make any additions, they're going to probably look for some scoring help up front. Are they going to make a stab at bringing home Brock Besser? He's been linked to this team forever. He's now a UFA or pending UFA with it sounds like a decent chance that the Canucks aren't going to re-sign him. So, is that going to be their play in free agency? I would suspect that, if for some reason they don't sign Besser, that they're going to try to find somebody like that who can help them on the offensive side of the game and the top couple of lines. But otherwise, you're going to see big internal business with Kaprizov and Gustafsson extensions. You're probably going to see a Rossi trade, which then could lead to multiple moves in that front to try to bring back either a young forward that they like better, or some draft capital that they can flip to another team for that kind of player. It's a big question mark around Wallstedt and the future of him, and whether or not they make any other moves here to try to gain a few extra picks, and will they sign Besser? So I think it could be a very interesting team to watch. I don't think we're going to see like a lot of change, but we're going to see enough that they're going to try to tweak things to become a stronger team next year. So let me know your thoughts on the Minnesota Wild and what you expect from them this offseason down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.